All right. What's up, everybody? This is Brandon Lindsay with the Rehabbers Playbook. Today, we're going to have a really cool conversation with my friend here, Stephen Glover. We're going to be talking all about building businesses, entrepreneurship, and really just a topic that I think both of us share a true passion for. We actually sat down for coffee very recently, and it was probably the fastest hour and a half. I don't even know if you recognize it was an hour and a half, but we just talked about what we're going to talk about today, and I figured it'd be a perfect podcast, perfect interview. I don't even know if I've never called this a podcast before, so that might be the first time. I don't know if I care to be lumped in with that, but if this is a podcast, that's fine with me. But anyway, let's introduce our guy here, Stephen Glover. Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and really kind of how you got here in a brief overview.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate you having me on your newly founded podcast. I
Brand
appreciate
new, about
that.
5 seconds ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So Stephen Glover, I'm the currently the principal broker, owner, CEO of Peak Property Management, located in Central Virginia. We manage single family houses, apartment buildings, medical buildings, office buildings, and medical associations as well. Brief background, just to summarize it, you can dive in wherever you want if
We
you want.
will.
I grew up around Virginia or Central Virginia. Went to VCU for about half a semester, dropped out of college, and then moved to Florida. Ended up wanting to work on motorcycles, so I went to Florida for a trade school. Did really well there, and in my head, I was going to own Honda Motorcycle Corporation. I was going to learn how they all worked and then come back and take over Honda. So anyway, ended up working on motorcycles. Got an internship for Michael Jordan's AMA Superbike team. That career went really well, but I ended up getting into a motorcycle accident that gave me traumatic brain injury. All kinds of other stuff happened, and it changed my outlook on life of what my purpose was and what I'm doing and why am I even here, like what's going on. So I essentially got a second chance. I think I was given somewhere around like a 25% chance to live after that accident. So I decided, all right, now my brain is healed, my body is healed. What's the best I can do to make an impact in this world outside of what I was doing selfishly through the motorcycle industry? And the answer to that in my head was become a Navy SEAL. So I started training to become a Navy SEAL. All the obvious stuff like running and doing calisthenics and working out at the gym. But one of the most important things was networking. Ended up finding a Navy SEAL that was in Richmond, Virginia. Kind of talked to him, told him what I wanted to do. He told me to show up early for a workout the next morning. I did. And then the next 4 years, I ended up working alongside him, running his company, SEAL Team Physical Training. He was taking me around the country, training corporate teams, athletic teams, and then in between, we were running the fitness company. And so I got a really good opportunity to work with him and train, but also get into small business and understand how that worked. How to grow a small business, how to operate one, how to build relationships and how to network, build partnerships to make that successful. So I got the opportunity to do that. Ended up going to Northern Virginia, doing sports performance training NFL athletes, Russian national hockey team, doing all kinds of awesome stuff with different athletes there. And then came back to Richmond, still in the fitness industry. And eventually I had, I guess, got the attention of some guys in real estate, and they had seen what I've done of these other small businesses and fitness companies and how we basically developed partnerships and interacted and the energy around those companies. And they, one of them brought me to lunch and basically said, hey, I have this property management company. I'd be interested in bringing you on as a partner and let's grow this thing. They just felt that Richmond had a need for a high-end property management company. And so, of course, I didn't know anything about real estate. It was literally didn't even understand that rent was an investment. I just didn't know anything. I'd never even thought of it. Here I was joining a property management company as a partner, and this was back in 2018.
That's all. And now, where is that business today?
So now we manage about 1,100. So in 2018, we had about 30 units under management. Maybe half of those were my partner's assets. So basically, we had an entity and we had one bit of software, and that was it. And then so we've grown it now. We have almost roughly 35 team members, 1,100 units under management, and like I said earlier, we have medical, apartments, office buildings, single family houses under management.
So now you have more employees than you started off with units under management, properties under management.
That's correct.
For people who are not in Richmond, well, a couple years ago, I don't know if you're still, I haven't seen it this year, and I don't know when they come out, but they always do the fastest growing companies in Richmond. I remember, what year was it? 2 years ago or last year, you're number one?
Yeah, so we were number 2 in 2021.
Gotcha.
And we figured we would test the water because we wanted the attention just to get on the radar.
Sure.
But then I like just kind of being the underdog, right? And so we hadn't ever really submitted to participate in that since then, but we wanted to test the water. And yeah, that was pretty,
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you're number one now. So
yeah,
for people who are not in Richmond, the growth that Peak Property Management has shown is extraordinary. I mean, and you can hear it, just 30 units or 30 properties all the way up to over 1,000 within 4 or 5 years. It's fantastic. And that comes with the employees, that comes with office space, that comes with more software. I'm sure more legal stuff, more accounting stuff, more team members. So there couldn't be a more perfect person to talk about building businesses. And what I think is really interesting is you getting into it without any real estate experience.
Right.
And that's just like the heart of entrepreneurship, is I'm going to jump in and figure it out. And I think more than anything, it proves that businesses and entrepreneurship is a people business. It's all about people. In almost any industry I'm aware of, it's more important to run a business. It's more important for the person who's running the business to have a really good network, really good relationships, and be a really good people person and be able to manage teams, as opposed to being an expert in property management, right?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? Do you agree with that? And how has that helped you with your success?
100%, because I can hire people who have more property management experience. In fact, many people on my team have more property management experience than I do, which makes us a really strong team. And so if you look back in the past, like when I worked in the motorcycle shop, I became a manager in my department, and I was the youngest person in that department, but it was because I knew how to deal with the people, I knew how to deal with the clients and stuff like that. And then fast forward to the fitness industry, we were, I was helping to operate that company with no fitness experience, just because I understood the people, I understood what they wanted, and kind of understood how to relate to them and what would make it a good experience for them. And then when I went to the personal training side of things, all of this happened within 2 years. And I had this like 2-year rule that basically the first 2 years in the motorcycle industry, I was able to start doing some really awesome stuff. Again, with that internship with Michael Jordan, there's like one person out of our entire school that selected to go there. I had no background in working on motorcycles and was that person selected. And then you had in the fitness industry, within 2 years, I was operating this company and then growing it, and we were being successful. And then in the kind of the military community, because I was not in the military, I was training to go in. And because of that brain injury, I actually could not get past medical. So I spent years fighting waivers. So I ended up training and hanging out with special operations groups all around the nation, doing nonprofit stuff, doing really hard ultra marathons and stuff like that, all kinds of different activities. But I got to hang out with those guys for 4 years. And within, less than 2 years, I was on base with these guys, training with active duty Navy SEALs. I was doing all kinds of just incredible stuff because I knew how to work with the people and network and build the right relationships. And same, in training these teams within 2 years on the personal training side, I was training NFL athletes and the Russian national hockey team and all these other things for the same reason. And then here we are into real estate. The first 2 years, I had to figure out what I was doing. I had to build the right relationships, had to get the right team in place. And then we were off to the races. And that's when we were recognized as Central Virginia's one of Central Virginia's fastest growing companies, and we probably would have hit on the scale on a national level as well, on like the Forbes list or Inc. list and stuff like that. We just didn't submit our numbers.
Sure. Yeah. Well, maybe I'm going to start pushing you to do that.
Yeah.
Start submitting more, because I wouldn't be surprised if you end up on that list. I mean, that growth is just, again, it's extraordinary. It's not something you see every day, right? So I always forget about, so me and Steven kind of share somewhat of a background. I've always been an entrepreneur. I haven't been in my professional career. I haven't been in a business or in a company run by somebody else. I'm either part owner or full owner. I think you share a lot of that as well. And what we didn't realize when we started chatting the other day was when you were training up in Northern Virginia, so was I. And we were both in ownership management roles in almost not really direct competition, but essentially we were both training athletes in Northern Virginia, which was a really good business model. I think we both agreed with. But that always takes me back, right? That makes me think of when I was really young. And I think this is an interesting question for you too. I remember being really young, always thinking that I was going to be an entrepreneur from like 10 years old. I don't know what it was. There was like a couple pieces to my personality that made it that way. This might be a character flaw, but I didn't love listening to authority. I always thought I could do it better. I always thought I wanted to be the one who was, not necessarily giving out the orders, but like we're talking about building teams. There's a couple other things involved with that. I actually always thought it was safer too. I always had this thought when I was young, when it was like, if the economy goes bust, if I'm an employee, it's really easy for me to get laid off. But if I'm an employer, I have more options, more flexibility to make something happen. So, question for you. When did your entrepreneurship goals or dreams start? Is it young like I was, or did you naturally fall into it? And do you have character traits at a young age that you could see early on that we're going to translate to what you're doing today?
So from the entrepreneurship aspect, I did probably what many people do, is like cut lawns in, middle school and try to make money and stuff like that. But I think that's pretty like standard. Like a lot of people did that growing up. But I did have something like this voice in my head that I always was scared of being the same as everyone else. And like growing up, that never like stood out. Like I had friend groups and I participated in stuff. I didn't like stand on the side. But it was just always in my head. I just felt like, you got to do something different. You got to be different. You got to be different. And I don't know why, but I never paired that with entrepreneurship. It was always something in my head. And I just figured everyone probably hears that, like, hey, you're a different person. You're different. You got to do different. The reason I dropped out of college was because I went to college. I wasn't very motivated at that. I was always a good student, but I wasn't very motivated to continue college. But when I went to college, what do you major in? Everyone that I knew majored in business administration. And there's nothing wrong with that, but like everyone that I knew, my friend group all majored in that, and I had nothing different. And it just terrified me. I'm like, why would I do that? Everyone's going to go do the same thing. I'm going to put myself in the same position. I need to do something different. And so that's when I took action on it. The entrepreneurship side of things came from, I was doing very well in the motorcycle world, was in the military/fitness world, was doing very well, but I actually never had ownership. I was always running and operating the company, sometimes fully, but running and operating the company, making all decisions. And I was always having to report my decisions to someone else.
Yep.
And the someone else was usually detached, not always, but usually detached, where I was in the fight. I was in the game every single day and seeing how these people were interacting and the effort. And so it got me where I was like, man, I wish we could have just went this way instead of that way. And then, so what this guy did, who brought me to lunch, my current business partner brought me to lunch, he knew it. He knew that was exactly the situation. And he said, hey, I think he offered 2% equity. I'll give you 2% equity. And I think he even mentioned phantom equity at the time, meaning it didn't really exist. But 50% phantom equity that would vest over a period of time
Mm,
that would make me part owner of this company. And that gave me everything I needed to make decisions and run with it. And
hmm.
then 2 years later, I ended up buying him out the majority position. So now I'm a majority owner. But that's the entrepreneurship bug, I think, hit me when I was in all these small businesses, seeing all the decisions of being able to operate the companies very successfully and then dealing directly with the people making an impact, but not having the final say to really take that company to the next level.
Yeah.
There was always a barrier. And I
Yeah.
wanted the barriers removed. I wanted to be able to operate. And that's what happened at Peak Property Management.
I like that. I find it very interesting that a big driving force was being different. That's not something that I guess I've always wanted to be different, but different wasn't the word. I guess it was more successful. I guess you could call that different. But that's very interesting. And I think you hit on the last part at the end that we have in common. So yeah, I do think there's a very specific mindset, a very specific um character traits that you have as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. By the way, I just thought about it while you were talking. I need to take something back before I get grilled about it. I haven't always been in ownership. I did have a job at one point for about 2 years, but it's always been in small business. And like you said, the feeling of I can do this better, or that barrier is kind of in the way of me making decisions and me taking this company to the next level. That always ate at my heart for some reason. I always wanted to be in control. I wanted to help it push forward. Anyway, going back, values, character traits.
Yeah.
What do you think, if you could name one, two, three, whatever you find most important, what are the most important character traits you believe are necessary for an entrepreneur to be successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think obviously it varies a lot in what industry and what you're looking to get out of entrepreneurship. If you're just in business by yourself and you don't have a team and you don't plan on having a team, that's fine. But your traits might be a little different. Your traits might just be a self-driver, self-starter, and a hustler, and you're just working hard and you're staying positive and all everything like that. That's kind of individual focused. If you
It's a really good point.
are building a team, then I'm looking for humility, probably first and foremost, to
Yep.
understand that you don't know everything and you can hire a team that's smarter than you are, and that you can learn from your team. Humility and then integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. Make sure that you're working, ethically and morally to be able to kind of build the foundation of your company on that. Obviously, there's you could go on with all the like you got to be disciplined, you got to be honest and all these other good traits that anyone should have. But I
Sure.
think the ones that stand out, discipline, humility, and then really just working in an honest fashion, and then but starting with humility is really what allows you to grow, I think, the foundation of everything on top of whatever you're trying to build if you have a team involved.
I love that. I love what you said with integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. Um, if you have employees and you say, I'm going to do this, and you're like, oh, something came up. I'm so busy as a CEO. I'm so business as a owner. I couldn't get to that. They're going to look at you differently. And that's how teams crumble. You have to stick to what you say and do it if you expect other people to do that as well. Leading by example, I think, is a huge part of it. I love everything you just said there. Humility, I think that goes to the idea of um, we're like coaches again, like where we started, right? When you field a team, you're not doing anything out there, but you're
Right.
trying to put people in positions to shine and be the best self and to help everybody else be better as well. And I think that's what you have to think of when you're being an entrepreneur or business owner. I think you brought up also a really good point, which is there is a difference between somebody who's going to be like, it's the what's the four
Cash flow
quadrants,
protection. Right.
right? Yeah, there you go, you had it for me. The self-employed, right? You're just a high paid or a more free business owner, I guess, or something. But that's not what we're talking about, right? We're
Right.
talking about something that you can build. Now that company you own is an asset, you can get more freedom out of it, hopefully down the road, and you can start looking at other ventures as
Right.
well. So freedom and entrepreneurship. What do you think that relationship really looks like? Because I think it gets very misconstrued. I think there's certain people who say if you're an entrepreneur, now you're going to work 100 hours a week. And then there's some people who are like, I'm going into entrepreneurship for more freedom.
Yep.
Which one is it? Is there anything that you can help other people with understanding about freedom and entrepreneurship?
Well, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to have sight of your goals,
Mhm.
right? You don't just jump in and say, I want to be an entrepreneur without any intent behind it. So, like,
Yep.
you want to work for yourself, maybe because of the security, like you mentioned, the downturn of a market, like you kind of control your destiny. But I think most people do it for freedom or for money or for, to be different or be more successful or control their destiny. So I think it really depends on that person, their goals. But when it comes to freedom, my definition of freedom changes over the years. And I think it's okay for goals and definitions to change.
Sure.
Um, you could have, again, a lifestyle business where you're building this business, you have a team in place that allows you to live a really good life. You could be
Hmm.
building a business that you hope is a generational business, not necessarily for your family, it could be, but really like beyond you. After your death, this business is still running and it goes on for 100 years. And
Sure.
so I think it's really just like, what are your goals? What do you want to get out of it? For me personally, I was a guy who said, I would work 80, 60, 80-hour weeks as an employee. And
Yep.
I just wanted to win. I wanted my team to win constantly. I did not want to fail. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted things to improve just constantly and see what we could accomplish together. And so when I became a business owner, it was the same deal. It was like everything I do, like, let's see what we can do together as a team, especially when I started hiring people. And so I was like 100-hour weeks till I die. I didn't care. I didn't care at all. And like my wife, unfortunately, I met my wife when I was training to the military. She basically when we met, the relationship was like, um, I need to, I'm going to train. This is my goal. This is where I'm at. Like I wasn't really looking for a relationship at the time. And the way she won me over, she was like, that's cool. I think that's awesome. Like,
I love that.
like she just let me do my thing. And the thing was, is like, I actually was worried I was doing a disservice to her. So I wanted her to understand like where my head was. And she completely understood and was like, hey, I have your back. Let's do this. And so she met me in that phase where I was training all week long instead of hanging out and going out and partying and socializing, all this stuff. And then now we're into the small business world and she has my back. Right. And so I worked, 100-hour weeks and she's just taking care of things. And then, and she's got a job and obviously, working on our own success as well. But then we have kids. And so my definition of, hey, I'm going to work 100-hour weeks till I die and see what I can accomplish quickly changed.
Sure.
And once we have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old now. And about when that 3-year-old, back when he was like, between 6 months and one, I started thinking differently. And I started thinking, what's my definition of freedom now? And what's my goals now? And so freedom quickly kind of changed to, hey, I still want this company that's going to go on forever. I want the team to benefit. I want the leaders to be the next generation on the team and benefit and give this level of freedom to their families and their kids. But what I want for my family is I still want to be active. I want to be accomplishing things, but I want the freedom to do it when I want to do it and how much time invested I want to do it, and to what extent I want to do it. I just want to be able to call to make those decisions, not be forced to do anything. And so the idea is for this to become a relatively passive business, but that involves me growing my team and growing my leadership within this team so that they can take over and have these opportunities for them and their families as well. And we continue to carry the company forward. So freedom is obviously financial freedom, but to me, it's quickly becoming more freedom to spend with my family, spend with my kids, and go to different events and things like that.
That's amazing, man. Everything you just said was awesome. And I have no business talking about this topic, but when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think it's really important to discuss the topic of your relationships, right? The amount of people who jump into entrepreneurships and their relationships just fall apart because it's not the same dynamic. And I think, again, I have no business talking about, but it's amazing that you've been able to handle that. And now you have two kids, right?
Yep.
Two kids.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead.
we have two kids, and my wife is a full-time mom, of course, now, so she's taking care of them.
Beautiful.
But we could have a whole nother podcast on just the support she's given me and how incredible she is. And literally none of this would ever even come close to being possible if I didn't have that rock solid teammate having my back. And she's with, there's been periods of time in entrepreneurship where I have felt like mental health issues for the first time in my life, which I never
Mhm.
thought would happen to me. There's
Sure.
been
Yeah.
so many things that we've been through over the years trying to get this company off the ground. And as it's been growing, where she's just been my rock solid person that had my back, understand when I need to work, for basically a business quarter till 3 a.m. every
Yeah.
single night. And then do it again at, 6 a.m. in the morning. And she's just been like, cool, do what you have to do. Like, I trust you, keep doing your thing. I have your back. And it's unbelievable. Whereas having the wrong partner or someone who doesn't understand your goals aren't aligned, it's very important to make sure your goals are aligned first before you get into that kind of situation. So
Yeah. Everybody fails in that situation. The business fails and the relationship fails. So God bless her, man. That's amazing to hear. It's beautiful to hear because not everybody gets a person like that, a teammate like that. Like, she's part of the team. She even
100%.
though she's not in the office, she's part of the team. So that's fantastic. What I think is a good segue from that is talking about stress. And you mentioned mental health, which is probably not best for this podcast either, because I don't have expertise in that. But you start feeling and experiencing things, I have too, that you've never thought you would. You think, I'm mentally strong, I'm emotionally strong, I know how to handle myself. And then you come into this world and you're like, I've never expected this. There's
Right.
days where it feels like it's crumbling. Then there's days you feel like you're on top of the world.
Yeah.
Talk about stress. And I would say, well, I'll even do one more preface with that. When we were just talking about time and the time commitment. And I think there's that funny meme out there that's like, I quit my 9 to 5 to be an entrepreneur. Now I work 100 hours a week or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
There's some truth to it. I think you've already mentioned that you have 3 a.m. nights sometimes, and sometimes you have more freedom, and over time you're building more freedom. I'm
Right.
the same way. I remember early on, I worked 7 days a week, all the time. But eventually I was able to get out of that. I strictly reserve my Saturdays and Sundays for my family and friends. Sometimes I can take a long morning, sometimes I can take a long weekend. But then like this past weekend on Saturday, I jumped in the office at like 5 p.m. and worked till like 8 p.m. or something just to get ahead of the week. And I loved it. It was great freedom, but the stress never leaves. I think that's the biggest thing people need to realize is not that you're going to get into 100-hour weeks, because I don't think that's exclusive. I don't think that's a blanket statement at all. But you're going to have 24/7 stress, right?
Right.
How did that evolve in your career? Are you getting better at it? Are there any techniques or things that you've done over time to handle stress better? And what advice do you have for people getting into it that aren't quite aware of what that stress looks like?
Yeah, that's a loaded topic for sure. So
Yeah, it's probably
uh,
like 5 questions in one, too.
yeah, so I wrote some notes real quick, but we, especially for me, coming like my background again, I did not serve in the military. I don't want there to be any confusion, but like in working with these special operation groups and in these different capacities
Sure.
on definitely a civilian side. It mostly like training, physical training, different like nonprofit organizations, hanging out with those guys and the challenges that they put themselves through are literally they're the most elite in the world at handling stress and handling challenges and working together as a team. And so in doing that for 4 or 5 years, day in and day out, going into this business, like I would laugh at 100-hour weeks. Who cares? Make it 200.
That's a
Like
good point. Yeah.
it didn't matter to me. Like nothing mattered. I just knew I could handle anything at all.
Mhm.
And so that's why I was just like, who cares? Give me 100-hour weeks till I die. I'll be
Yeah.
able to handle it. And I could outwork everything. What really got stressful to me is when that ended up growing the company and I could not outwork the level of work that we had. There
Yeah.
wasn't enough hours there. I couldn't duplicate myself. I had to start relying on teammates, I had to start hiring and delegating. That really, for me, was when, because I knew I would handle it when it was in my hands. When I had to start delegating, and it wasn't a control thing. I'm fine to delegate, but it was so stressful trying to train and make sure that everything was being handled and all the processes were in place. And then eventually there's so many balls up in the air, you don't even know what the other people are juggling a few, down the chain of command. Like you don't know what's happening. And so the level of stress is constant. It never ends. I think there's ways to compartmentalize it. I think you have to compartmentalize your stress. You can't think of everything at once. And so the advice that I was given when I thought I was going to Buds before I didn't get through medical, the advice was focus on one evolution at a time. If you look at, let's say, Hell Week, for example, if you start Hell Week, and again, going off guys who've been there, if you start Hell Week and then you're focusing on Friday, the last day of Hell Week, those are the guys that are going to drop out because you still got 5 days in advance. If you're focusing on that evolution at that time, all you have to do is make it to the next evolution. And if you can just make it to the next evolution, you're good. Just focus on that evolution. You're not focused on the next 5 days. And so a lot of times in very stressful environments, I will take one step at a time, one evolution at a time. Another thing that I've done is,
By the way, I love that advice. I need to take that advice, because that is 100% what you feel like as an entrepreneur. Is like, I just have this list over here, this list over here. Somebody's texting me. It's nonstop. I love that.
you have to just take one evolution at a time. And that's literally how I still operate today, because we're going through the ringer right now on all kinds of different improvements and new software. And it's our rebuilding season. And so we are taking one evolution, one step at a time. And then we're focused. We know there's a lot in the pipeline, but we're only focused on what we're doing now. We have it planned out, only focused on one evolution at a time. It keeps compartmentalizes the stress a bit. You don't worry about what you can't control. And then another thing is, a lot of people correlate stress with burnout. And so burnout to me is when you lose focus of your goals. That's the only way anyone gets burnt out. You lose focus of your long-term goals. You get too much in the day-to-day and you forget why you're doing it. If you stay on top of your long-term goals, it's going to help mitigate the stress because you're going to remember why you're doing it, and it's going to mitigate any opportunities for burnout. Eventually, as you grow, you're able to delegate, and the first thing you do is delegate things that you are not good at or that stresses you out the most. Let someone else who is good at it or that it doesn't stress them out, let them handle it and pay them great to do it, so you never have to do it again. So I started delegating the stuff that was most time-consuming, most stressful, the stuff I was worse at first, making those hires to get those off my plate, build the team, lower my stress in theory. And then I also was able to then manage my time a little bit better. Like you said, you went in on a Saturday and worked. I'll go in on a weekend and work pretty often because the office is quiet. I also don't take meetings on Mondays and Fridays. So Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays loaded up. Mondays and Fridays, I get time to myself, time to focus on the business, time to be in my head if I need it, time to work on other things that I haven't been able to get to if I need it. But it's my Mondays and Fridays are my time. Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are in the fight, going through all the meetings and stuff like that. So that's another thing where you can help control your time, will also help to control your stress as well.
Which is also where the discipline comes in, because if you have the discipline to segment stuff off and have some sort of balance in a very unbalanced world, that's the only way you can really get through it. There is a lot of discipline involved, and I fight discipline every day. It's really, really easy when things are going good to want to skip on things, but that snowballs in a really bad direction. And you don't want all the work that you just did to you don't want to get complacent and just negate all the work you just did, right? So you brought two things up that I want to get into. Everything just kind of naturally flows, which is why I figured it'd be great for it just to be us two. But you mentioned employees I want to get to after this, but I really like talking about the idea of balance. Right. We both share a buddy, Daniel, who's also been on this podcast. Daniel says something that like really makes me feel comfortable, where he says, this life is not a life of balance, right? You can try to achieve as much as you want, but the earlier you accept that it's a life of imbalance, is the more happy you're going to be through the process, is the more you're going to understand the process. So the way he says it is he might have a month where he's in Europe with family, but then the next month he's crushing stuff, working late hours, weekends for the next month. And then, the next month is different and so on. Do you agree with that? Is there a way that you're achieving balance? You kind of already mentioned some things. You designate Monday and Friday, which I think is great. I do the same exact thing, by the way, Monday and Friday. Everything else is during the week. What else do you do to try to achieve balance? Or do you just kind of let it be the way it is? And you're just like, this is an imbalanced life and I'm going to embrace it.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. I agree with that overall sentiment. Like, of course, I have some structure in place to be
Yeah.
successful. Like, wake up every morning and work out and, do that at a certain time so my wife can then go work out and stuff like that. Of course, we have some sort of routine that stays on structure, but I hate the word balance. I don't like
Yeah,
it. I don't like when
me
people
too.
talk about work-life balance. I don't, I understand the people that talk about it, and yeah, they probably have some good points of doing it, but that reminds me of corporate. It reminds me of, hey, your balance, if you want balance, go to a 9 to 5 and then get your salary and then get off every day. That's your balance.
That's right.
Like,
Yep.
people who want balance and they also want to be entrepreneurs and they also want to be successful, like overly different level of success than most, like there's no balance. And the thing is like, you might have to be going 100 miles per hour in one direction, then get that thing solved, go 100 miles per hour in the other direction. There's times where my business needs so much attention that I'm working, like, this doesn't happen as much anymore, but I'll work just, again, 100-hour weeks to get these problems solved, get people in place, get systems in place, make sure it's taken care of, that I neglect my physical health, which is not healthy, but
Yeah.
I'll neglect that. And maybe I don't go to the gym, I'm not exercising much or training as much. And then there's times where I'm like, holy cow, I'm out of shape and my business can chill. Let me go make sure that I'm eating healthy, meal prepping in the gym every single day, sometimes 2 times a day, and, getting back on track there. But the idea is, I think, like, some level of balance, because what I just mentioned is not healthy. I'm moving away from that now that I can control my time a little bit more. But in the beginning, entrepreneurs are going to face some of that, especially if they're growing fast and building a business.
Hmm.
But what I'm more concerned about is awareness versus balance.
Yeah.
So if you are aware that you're imbalanced, you probably can take action and get back on track. If I wasn't
Great
aware
point.
that I'm losing my health and all this and focused on the business, and now I'm grossly overweight and unhealthy and have heart conditions, that's an
Doesn't
issue.
matter. Yeah.
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 But if I go a little bit one way and a little bit other, I'm aware of this, I'm aware I can get back on track.
Yep.
We're good to go. And so I think really people should be focused on being aware, like genuinely and honestly aware of their situation, their time they're spending with their family, time they're spending on their business, time that they're spending with their network, their own health, their mental health, like all these different things. If you're aware of how you're allocating your time and what you're doing, that's the balance you need. That gets you where you need to be. But if you're so focused on a work-life balance, I don't think you're going to be taking the risk, or you're going to be missing opportunity or something like that.
Man, that is a fantastic point. What a great, I've never thought of it that way. That's a really good way. And that makes me think of all the times I've gone in and out of the gym. There's sometimes, like you said, it'll be 2 a days. It'll be like 75 hard. Let's go diet. Let's do everything. And then other times it's like, I haven't been in the gym in a few days. But there is something about controlling what you can control, because you have some sort of system for things that you can control. Monday, Fridays, mornings. I'm the same exact way. Monday, Friday, mornings, weekends, kind of. But I have a morning routine that I try to do every morning. And what's really interesting is I can have awareness just from that, because every morning I try to, it's read, meditate, gym, and then some other small things. But those are like the main core things I'm trying to do at the time that I can and the time I can control it. But then there's going to be weeks where it's like I skipped reading every day, and you feel it when you have some sort of control, some sort of routine in the places that you can control. So hopefully that makes sense. But that is what I've noticed too. Never thought of the awareness portion, but that is a really, really big part. And now I'm really glad that I can say I feel like I'm aware of that. And again, kind of because I can really notice when I don't read every day if I have a habit of reading every single day, so there'll be those 2 weeks where I'm off of it, and then I just know I need to jump back into it somehow.
Yeah, because you're gonna have different demands in life. You're gonna get
Yeah.
sick. Your family's gonna need something. And if you're so worried about balance, you're gonna kill yourself trying to find that balance. And,
Yep.
and I think awareness you got to pair it with honesty to yourself too,
Mhm.
because you can say, you know, I'm busy at work. I'm not going to work out this week. You got to be honest with yourself, and you're the one who knows that, right? So like, being aware is not making excuses. It's like, hey, I know I'm missing the gym, but I'm just really busy. I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, no, this really needs my attention right now, and I'm going to make up for it. And I know I'm going to be at a loss if I miss the gym, and I'm going to get back on this day, and I'm disciplined enough to do that. If you call the shots proactively, I think it's fine. But awareness also entails knowing when you're making excuses.
Mhm.
And not just using awareness as an easy out. So I think there's some different factors to allow you to be able to have that imbalance. Like we mentioned Daniel, I would assume he's pretty disciplined
Pretty
and he
aware.
that
Yeah.
imbalance because when he comes back, he's going to get some work done, right?
Oh
And he's
yeah.
going to take care of himself and take care of his family. But he also can go vacation and he's not going to get derailed and he's not going to make excuses. He's not that type. So
Right.
that's the idea. Like you can have that imbalance and you can have the awareness, but you can't have it if you're going to make excuses or not be honest with yourself either, because then you're going to go too far one way and too far the other and just be like, I don't believe in balance, so it's all good. It's all good
Right.
if I'm morbidly obese or something
That's
like that.
that's a good point. I think that people could probably hear that statement and run away with it, right? Like, oh, balance is okay, fine, I won't. And I think what we're talking about, the importance of it can't be overlooked because we're in an entrepreneur world. That's our network. Those are the people we're around. And unfortunately, you do see people who struggle with their health when they get into entrepreneurship and they get down the line and they're like, oh, I realized it. They're aware and they start making changes.
Yep.
Unfortunately, not everybody makes changes, and that means that entrepreneurship might not have been the best route for you, you know?
Or maybe it was a good route, but you didn't have the network in place to hold you accountable or to hold
Mhm.
you responsible, because a
Yeah.
lot of entrepreneurs, they're the boss.
Yeah.
So telling them what they're doing is wrong. I've developed a network of mentors that basically hold me accountable and they call me out on my stuff. Like I didn't realize I was having mental health issues. And I met with one of my mentors. I was just like, he's like, hey man, you've been working out? And I'm like, nah, I've just been busy. And he's like, let's talk about that. And we just had it was over lunch. And he just said, hey man, I'm going to tell you, like, I think you're depressed. I think you're dealing with these other issues. And I was like, no, like my mind is rock solid. I've been through all this stuff. I've trained my mind and developed my mind for years. Like,
Yeah.
no chance. And then I started doing research on it. And I was like, he's 100% right. It was 1,000% right. I didn't want to wake up anymore. Didn't want to get out of bed. Wasn't working out. Like, and it was just out of nowhere. And I think it was just it was the hardest challenge. It was a time of the hardest challenge of growing this business. And it just rewired my brain. And I felt trapped. And the thing is weird that I'd never dealt or felt anything like that before. I wasn't aware of that, but I had someone in my network that was willing to call me out on it and
Wow.
tell me what he thought was going on.
Yeah.
I have a number of people, maybe 4 or 5 really trusted people that I can tell anything about family and about business that are more successful than me, that have been there, that have raised businesses, had employees, and that I look up to, that have my back and will hold me accountable and call me out on my excuses or lack of awareness in certain areas that gets me back on track. So maybe entrepreneur is right for those people, but they didn't develop the right network to hold them accountable or responsible when they started getting off track.
Amazing. And the network that they could have a network, but like you said, not the right network. And that network could be super successful, but they're not successful in, say, entrepreneurship or real estate. So they don't really know what you're going through. You can find a successful person who's never been an entrepreneur, and they're going to give you advice that
Sure.
probably doesn't really have a lot of foundation to it, right? Like this is a different world here, and you do need to be around people who are in this world. That's fantastic, man. I really appreciate you opening up about it. I'll be honest too. I've dealt with it. It wasn't too long ago. And you go through spells, of course. But I have a system. I know exactly what I need to do. Um, I need to, for me, if I'm ever feeling in a low place, working out is a huge help for me. If
Yeah,
I just get in the gym for a few minutes, everything changes. And if I get back on that, that's huge. And again, reading, that's why I make that the most important things I hit every day. Everything else is in balance, but I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to read. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to pray. I kind of put those two together. What about you? What do you do if you ever find yourself in that position again? What would be your process of potentially getting into a better headspace?
yeah, I'm actually glad you're asking that because I think it might be able to help people. Um, because when it happened, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what to do about it. I had never dealt with it before. I didn't even recognize it, and it got really deep.
Mhm.
And I was so fortunate that someone kind of brought that to my attention. Um, what I realized is, again, it kind of goes back to awareness. Now, when I start feeling a different way, and it's different than normal, and I think one thing I realize is once you feel it, you start feeling it in different places. Like you start recognizing it in different areas and stuff where you think, hey, I'm just having a down day. Once it
Mhm.
becomes two or three, you start, oh, I felt this before.
Yeah.
And so I start, then it triggers in my head, and I'm like, all right, cool. What do I need to do? And so obviously if I've been missing workouts, I need to get back in the gym, or back to whatever training we're doing, or back to whatever routine you have. But the big thing for me, and this is just me personally, I don't
Mhm.
know if this equates to anyone else, but
Sure.
me personally, I've realized that, and this is really weird, when I have just achieved something that I've been trying to achieve for a while, or hit some level of checkpoint that I feel really good about, something I've been thinking about for a long time, that's when I feel it. And I've recognized that over the past couple of years, and it will sneak up. And it's weird because you've just accomplished something great,
Yep.
and I am at the lowest I've ever been. And I
Mhm.
think what it is, and what I found, and it's worked the past couple of times I felt this way. I will achieve something, I'll feel it through the next few days and be like, here we are, we're back. And then I notice, oh, I just accomplished this. This is why it's happening. I set a new goal. And
Mhm.
so if basically I feel it when I feel like have accomplished something, but I don't know what's next. I feel lost. I feel hopeless. I feel it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's weird. And
Isn't
so
that funny? It's you achieve something and then you get put into a bad place. I think that's something that a lot of people don't recognize. I can understand that for sure.
yeah, and it sounds like a terrible life. It sounds like, man, well, this guy's never going to be able to not achieve things.
Yeah.
It's just something you have. My new goal doesn't mean that I'm working 100-hour weeks and I'm back on the grind. And it just means something new to focus on, some other area, some other target, something else to get excited about. And it could be, hey, I have a new goal of spending more time with family, or I have a new goal of accomplishing XYZ. It's just, the thing is I need another purpose or something else to shoot for. And so really, I think naturally I just want to drive. And just, I really enjoy making an impact and accomplishing things. And if that seems to slow down or stop or be out of my control, that's when I start to feel it. And so I think that's just for me personally. It goes back to awareness, being aware of myself. When I start to feel that way, I will absolutely take action. The worst thing to do, I think, is to feel that way and ignore it, or to not recognize it, or to neglect it. I will take action immediately. And it's interesting because this is the first time I think I've ever openly talked about this. So I haven't prepared
Break
any
the internet, man.
talking about this, right? But so just, these are all thoughts that's been in my head the past few years, and this is how I navigate it. And since then, I've noticed it in other people, and I've helped other people work through it in a similar way. Um, but I've never really shared my side of it. But this is basically, some of the things I've dealt with. I think that's been spurred through overwhelming stress, and just really wanting to make an impact, to make a difference, and have all this weight on your shoulders. Which now is I have a really strong team backing me up, so I'm very thankful for that. And so I feel it less and less now, more focused on family, more focused on driving the business forward.
Yeah.
But I'm still aware that it could come back at any time, and I just need to take action when it does.
No, it's a beautiful thing, man. I think talking about this is something that everybody that we know in this business, I'm sure they can relate to it. And then people who are outside trying to get in, I think it's important to talk about too. And it's not exclusive to entrepreneurship. This is for
Yeah.
people in 9 to 5s. I know so many people. A lot of the reasons people come up to me and talk to me about entrepreneurship is because they're having difficulties emotionally, mentally with what they're doing every day. And
Right.
I could only imagine waking up every day and doing something you hate over and over and over and how that's going to affect you. But as long as you have tools and techniques to recognize it, I think you have incredible self-awareness about it,
Yeah.
because that's a very interesting thing to point out is after I succeed, achieve something, that's when this could come back. That's when I'm in the most vulnerable state. And this is just a random question. Um, have you seen the new like it's not super popular. It's a lot in sports right now. They're doing like new goal setting these days where they're saying don't set goals. I don't know how much I agree with it. I think there's balance between the two because that's completely opposite of what we did as athletes and people our whole lives, which is set a goal. I'm going to have this many rushing yards this year or whatever it is. But they say that there's two problems with that is if you achieve it, the way they put it is what's next, right? You're always going to be, it's going to be a way to burn out because you're going through that cycle of, okay, I achieved a goal. What's next? Or you don't achieve it. And guess what? The next question is, what's next? So you still kind of,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. I don't know. Again, I haven't looked too much into it. I was just wondering if you heard about it or if you have any thoughts about it too.
Yeah, actually, that's really interesting. I've not heard of that, but I
Hmm.
also will tell you that I do not set specific goals. I use the
Sure.
term set goals,
Yep.
but and I've never even thought about it this way until you just said this. I set directions, and
Yep.
it's the what direction do I want the company to go in, and then what are the first few steps that I have to do or action items I have to do to start moving in that direction. And
Sure.
like when it comes to real estate investing, it's like I'm not out here saying like how many houses I need to buy this year. I
Hmm.
just know um there's action I need to take to be more successful at investing in real estate. And I
Right.
just need to start taking that action. And then those are the action items I'm going to take. And
Hmm.
so it's interesting. So I wonder that's really interesting because I don't like setting specific goals. I've never correlated it because then what's next or what if you fail or what if you overachieve or anything like that. I just know that things change so rapidly and a lot of times you can overperform or underperform or whatever. Doesn't matter to me. I just want to know I'm heading in the right direction. And so that's actually been tough for my team because my team's like, where do we want to be in 3 years? I'm like, in a better place. So
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm like forced to set those goals for my team to follow because they want that and they like it. But for me, I just want to set a direction and then work hard down that path and kind of what that vision is. And I wonder if it's along the same lines just psychologically as what they're saying about don't set goals. Maybe you can kind of say like set a direction, like what direction do you want to head in, and then what actions do you need to take to head in that direction?
Yeah, I find it interesting for the same reason as you do. I started off setting goals and I ended up in this position where again, like there's many different ways to set goals too, right? You could do shoot for the stars, land on the moon or whatever it is, or you could do
Yeah.
the like a very realistic goal that you're going to hit. And that plays into the way you emotionally and mentally handle it too. And
Yep.
so over time, naturally, I set goals every week, if not every day, kind of. But they're not like I'm gonna get this exact thing on this exact date. It's I want to be, I want to have this much freedom where I can do this, or I want to have this much money where I can do this. But it's not like it's a direction. The way I look at it is I consider it like vision creating. I'm kind of trying to create a
Right.
vision, not necessarily
Right.
a goal, because that
Right.
vision, where you are, I guess you could say in that vision, you can get there 7 different ways. But if you
Right.
set like this one specific path, you're not going to be able to be flexible, which you have to be these days. You have to be flexible every single quarter, which makes things harder to set goals also. So
Right.
even people who were setting 5-year, 10-year goals, those goals have now turned to 1-year, 3-year goals, which are literally impossible because COVID happened and inflation happened, and it just changes everything. So it is an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I'll look more into it.
Right.
Maybe we'll do
Yeah,
another
I see
podcast.
things can change so quickly. So like the 5 year, 10 year, it's just setting like a direction or a
Direction.
vision really of where you might want to go, but it's probably going to
Right.
change next year.
Yeah.
Uh, a mentor told me once too, he gave me the advice of like, because I talked to him about this. I was like, it's hard for me to set goals. he suggested, and I thought it was smart. It still, it works for me in some scenarios. But to set ranges instead of like specific numbers or
Yeah.
specific set ranges. So like your minimum range, what you'd be happy with, and then you're like just like shoot for the stars range
Right.
at the top. And then if you're somewhere in between, you should be happy. I think that may help with some people who need to set specific goals. If they set ranges instead, you still get the numbers out of it. You still get to head that direction, but you're not worried about like a too easy goal or a goal you're never going to accomplish.
Right. There's not just like a defined finish line. And I
Right.
think that might be what they're talking about psychologically is if there's a defined finish line, if you're on this side, you don't reach it, you failed. If you're on this side, you reach it, you succeed, but now you have to set another goal, you
Right.
know? And yeah, again, I don't think it's like super popular. It's still really hard to get out of that. And it's hard to really explain the psychology behind it unless you're like what we do, which is we set goals on a consistent basis and you start seeing how that manifests at the end of the day.
Right.
So all good stuff, man. Like I said, this conversation can go on forever. I definitely want to hit on a couple things. We're about an hour in, so I think we're good. Let's talk about employees. This is something you have way more experience than me in. I've hired a handful, but I've never had a crew of 35 people ever. The most we've ever had at a time was like 8
Right.
people. And we go in and out of different sizes of our company, depending on, again, what the economy throws at us. I think one of the most beautiful parts of entrepreneurship is you can maybe not duplicate yourself, but you can duplicate certain responsibilities that you have. And once you really think of it that way, growth is somewhat exponential as long as you have people to hire. Let's talk about employees. I want you to talk about a few things. One is how you hire and how you really focus on keeping a team culture. Because as an entrepreneur, I know you enough at this point to know you have a team culture and you want to make sure you're bringing in people that boost that up instead of tear that down. How do you hire people for that purpose? And what do you do to make sure that you're bringing in the right people?
I'm actually really proud of this. This is one of the things that I think I've gotten lucky at and have done really well. My team is insanely stacked. We
Mm-hmm.
have a stacked team. We have just incredible people, incredible personalities, incredible team players on our team. And where it comes from is as much as possible, when we grow our team, I look within my network.
Yeah.
So of course, there's some positions where I've had to like list online and put the job posting online, but in many cases, the team is built from people within my network. So if we need to hire a property manager, I might go to a bunch of other real estate people and say, who's the best property management, who's the best property manager individual that you've worked with on this particular asset ever in Richmond? Who are they? Who do they work for now? Et cetera, et cetera. And then I will find out how to have a conversation with that person, bring them on our team. I've done that for property managers, residential, commercial property managers. Our finance team is completely stacked with people with decades of experience who I took 2 years recruiting. Almost everyone on our team has been recruited from different places, not necessarily in the property management industry, but just looking for good people.
Yeah.
We can teach property management all day long. And so you hire the hustlers and you hire the ambitious people and you hire the people that are really good at just whatever skill set you need on the team, regardless of property management or real estate history. We have people from the gym here. We have people from retail. We have people from all over the place with all customer service backgrounds or whatever. I would say maybe half of our team had property management backgrounds. And you bring them on, you can teach property management all day long. What you can't teach is the personality, the hustle, the ambition, the team support, the communication, the responsiveness. All of that is what we value. And so as far as hiring, we hire within our network first. If I need to post a job listing, I certainly will. And usually that's shared with the network. And a lot of times people will then share it with people who may be interested.
Yeah.
And so it'll be like 1 degree removed and they'll come on our team.
Do you think that helps you with more trust?
100, it
Yeah.
helps me in every single area that is beneficial.
Yeah.
to a business owner. Like they come in, we already, there's already a mutual relationship in place. There's already a reason for them to perform and for me to perform. There's already a reputation
Yeah.
for me and for them. There's all these things in place already that are predetermined, and usually in a very positive way, to where they enter and they come here day one, and we give them the intro speech. And the intro speech it is a lot of things about the peak, history and background. But one of the main things we say is, from this day forward, I don't care how good you are at what you do, we have no egos on this team. We have
Love it.
no ego. We can learn from anyone else on this team, regardless of the position, regardless of the background, their personality or experience. We can learn from anyone else on this team. And I go into teamwork, and I talk about how, many teams will eat their weak. The weak link will always get picked on. People will talk about them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So let's just remove that weak link from the team. Then you have another team with one more weak link. So let's remove that person. Let's keep going until there's one person left. And you can't operate. You can't have a business. You're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
So instead, let's look at that weak link, whoever they might be or whatever they might be, and let's raise them up and make them stronger. And so if we picture ourselves as a football team or a soccer team or any kind of sports team, if we have stronger players in our team, we're going to win more games. We're going to win championships, and we're going to be a team like no one else has seen before. So would you rather have stronger teammates and build them up, or would you rather have weaker teammates and beat them down? And so our team decides to drop our ego on day one. We decide to come together and support everyone as a team and help them be stronger at their positions. When there is an issue with a position, we look at the company processes, policies, tools, software, resources first and foremost, and we don't blame the person. We assume it's something the company didn't put in place to help that person win. Secondly,
That's extreme ownership. I'm sure have you read that book by Jocko? Oh my gosh. Yep.
His leadership company, like we work with his leadership company. I definitely am a big fan of Jocko and what he says. And a lot of what he says relates to my time training, where I saw all of those principles at work. Again, no combat, anything like that, but like training,
but
you see leaders and everything like that, where teams win or lose based on their leaders. And so we're constantly saying that everyone on our team is a leader. We all have the ability to make decisions. And then we try to make sure that like everyone knows what sandbox they can play in, what decisions they're allowed to make. They take ownership of their decisions and their actions. There's so many degrees, and each position of this team has the ability to perform and make an impact. And what that is, what it leaves you with is everyone on this team is genuinely proud of what we're doing and what we're building, and everyone has ownership of it. And when we have a new hire, everyone takes that person under their wing and says, welcome to the team. How can I help you? How can I support you? When we have an issue that goes wrong, everyone steps up and says what they could do better. We have seen almost nothing but victories since we came in business because of that. Of course, there's a lot of stress and we make mistakes and stuff like that, but you take ownership immediately and the whole team understands that principle. And then we take actions to mitigate that so it never happens again. We become a very strong company, and our culture is very strong and a very proud but humble culture. And so now within our team, we have very low turnover. We have employees we've had employees in, Spain, Nicaragua, Mexico, Belize, Jamaica, the Philippines, and probably a few other countries that I'm forgetting. Right now, we have them in multiple countries, and then we have a larger in-house team as well. But the thing is we're building a very diverse team from all over with all different skill sets and cultures, yet we're all here and care and genuinely support each other on many different levels. So it's an awesome experience. And it's actually like whenever we make a new hire, there's generally a 2-week time period where sometime in the first 2 weeks, that new hire will come to me, whether they're remote or in-house, and they'll tell me that this is a culture and this is a working environment that they've never experienced before.
I love that, man.
It's like clockwork, every new hire.
Yeah. And you mentioned turnover. If you're a new entrepreneur, you're trying to get in, if you want to burn out really fast, have a bunch of turnover. Have to keep hiring and firing people. That is the fastest way to burn out a business. But if you do what you're doing and you instill that culture early, and you're really making sure you have trust and they understand that culture before they come in, it's huge. I was talking with Jim on the last time we were on this podcast. I'm gonna keep saying it now. I'm gonna get carried away, start telling everybody I'm a podcaster. But anyway, with Jim, we were talking about construction, and I was mentioning that if you look at the best builders in town, there's one thing you can know for sure: they have the best team. When you look at successful businesses like yours, there's one thing you know for sure: they have a great team, right? And I've seen a lot of people try to scale as fast as you've scaled, but they just hire relentlessly, and they go by that idea of hire fast, fire faster. I agree with it, but you should still focus on your hiring, or else you're just going to be in this constant circle. Actually, I wouldn't even say hire fast, fire faster. I would say fire fast, but take your time hiring. To me, that's my opinion. But I have no problem letting somebody go if they're not doing their job. You mentioned something else really important. You're going to take responsibility before you put any blame on anybody. As a matter of fact, every company I've been a part of, we have a no pointing fingers rule. If something goes wrong, it's nobody, maybe it is technically somebody's fault, but we're not going to point fingers and say this is your fault. We're going to be solution oriented, and we're going to go towards the solution before we even worry about putting somebody down and telling them that it's their fault. All great things. Do you pay your employees well?
Yeah, and that's another thing is invest in your team. Invest.
Yes.
So if we create an environment, you can say like, hey, let's have a good culture, let's all support each other, but it's backed by numerous things. It's backed by one, how you find them. They're within your network. There's already that understanding of who they are, what type of person they are, and they're a team player. And then two, it's how did you invest in them? Are you willing to invest in good team players? Or are you to be like, no, I can't exceed this amount of my payroll. I will overspend on my payroll so that our clients and tenants have a better experience, knowing that the people they're dealing with are good people that are invested in the company, happy with their compensation. They show up every day. They have a great personality and they're happy to be here. Another aspect of that is what clients, and we don't need to go too deep down this road, but I think it's important to mention, what clients do you select? What clients do you do business with? And so we have
huge topic. I'm so glad you brought it up.
We've turned down, we manage 1,100 units. We've turned down, I stopped counting at 4,000. We turned down over 4,000 units in the past few years because we've decided it's not the right assets or not the right clients for our team. And so what does that do for our team? When I tell our team, hey, look, we're very selective. You're working for, a company who is very selective because we want you to have a good experience. We could more if I took 4,000 more units, but I would lose people like crazy. The turnover, everyone would be unhappy. And so the idea is let's be very selective about our relationships under management, the properties under management, and then the team is proud of our properties under management. They're proud of the tenants we're managing. And so they want to show up, they want to go on site, they want to take care of business and take care of maintenance. And I think then the clients feel it is like, hey, we were selected. Now we got this really strong team at a still competitive price. And so it just creates a really good environment for retention and for, team satisfaction. And on top of like the team building is cliche, but we do it in a way where like, hey, we go out and we just grab a dinner or like we grab lunch. We set up different events to where we're out like, going to a baseball game and stuff like that. And so we spend time together. We nurture relationships. I bring in coaches too. I'll bring in coaches to kind of talk to our team so they don't learn from me all the time. They see different perspectives. So I'm constantly working on the culture of our team and how people interact. The first like 3 days, that day one conversation, I say, hey, the first 3 days, you're going to feel stressed. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to be drinking from a fire hose. The only thing I care about as the CEO of the company, the only thing I care about is that you develop relationships with the rest of the team. Listen and try to retain whatever you can. I don't expect you to retain any of it. Develop relationships with the rest of the team. That's all I care about the first few days. That's the most important thing you can do. And so I tell everyone that on day one. So essentially, I'm willing for them to do nothing the first few days, the first week.
I do the same thing. Yeah. One thing I love that you brought up choosing your clients. I don't think people think of that. People think of we're just going to take in as much business as we can and handle it. If we can handle it, great. If it's slow, whatever. But the clients themselves, the relationship you have with the clients is so important. And I guess it depends what business you're in. If it's very transactional, not relationship based, maybe you don't need to be worrying about this as much. But with what we do, for me, contracting, flipping, building, partnerships, contractors, project managers, for my team, and then you have clients on the contracting side. And when I was a contractor, it was the most apparent thing is this business is going to live and die by the clients we choose,
Right.
because in contracting, it's really easy to get yelled at, and it's really easy to pick a client who thinks they know about construction, or they have an uncle who fixed a sink before and now he's like the expert on sinks, so you run into all these issues with the wrong client. And I've seen the wrong client or the wrong partnership bring down more businesses than probably anything else I can think of, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. So I'm so glad you brought that up. That is a cornerstone to what I would say is part of entrepreneurship, is making sure you choose your clients properly.
Yep.
And I also share with you, I asked that question pretty bluntly because I knew the answer about, do you pay your employees well? I'm the same way. I want my guys to be paid. I don't want them thinking about a side job that they need to do to make money. I want them to be so comfortable. And one thing that breaks my heart is, like, people I know, people I love, people I grew up with who hate their job,
Right.
right? And it really breaks my heart. And they're constantly moving from job to job, and they're thinking that this next job is going to be the saving grace. And then they get into it and that one sucks. I tell people this all the time. I truly believe, and there's studies about it too. I can't cite it, so just trust me. But there's studies about it that people are more happy. What you are doing is less important to your happiness than who you're working with. And they actually say the number one factor of job happiness is not only who you're working with. That's number two. Number one is who you're working for. So you. So you can probably feel pretty good that you're instilling the right culture when you have such low turnover and everybody's happy with your company, because that's rare. You're part of the 5%, right?
Especially in property management. I would,
Sure. Yeah,
because
good point.
I would assume that most of our people don't really enjoy getting yelled at for every single thing
Good
that
point.
may not really be within
Your
our
fault.
control, such as like
Sure.
rent being due or a
Yeah.
maintenance issue or something like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, we get just at we're an absolute punching bag. And so rewinding really quickly to 2018, when I was doing research to see if I wanted to get into property management, everyone was saying no, 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 stay away from it. And again, remember, I didn't know anything about it. And
Sure.
everyone was saying no. And then I asked why, and everyone's like, so negative. You're in the fitness industry, everyone's happy, you're helping people reach goals. It's so negative. Everyone hates property managers, terrible industry. And then I thought, like, I was kind of naive and dumb, like in thinking this, but I was like, well, if everyone hates it and everyone's negative and no one answers phone calls and no one's responsive and no one is positive, like, what if I went in and we were able to create a team that is positive, has a, like, answers the phone, responds, like, does what they say they're going to do, like,
Yeah.
and a better mindset, a more positive mindset about this stuff, then we're probably going to be successful. Like, that seems like a pretty easy bet.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, like, that's essentially like you walk in our office now and people are laughing and hanging out. They're all talking to the same office and they've been here for a couple of years, and all the new hires are getting to know people and stuff. And it's just a really good, healthy environment in a really somewhat
Yeah, I never
toxic
thought of
and
it. I mean, that
hard
is very,
industry.
yeah, it relates so perfectly to contracting. You're a punching bag. Yeah, because think of it, it's just things that go wrong on houses that go wrong all day, but somehow it's your fault now, you know? So yeah, fascinating. Very, very good point. It's so impressive what you've built there. You're right. Property management, unfortunately, if we knew each other back then, I'd probably be telling you not to do it. But I think, again, it correlates so well with who you pick as a client. Imagine if you picked 5,000 and you're dealing with 4,000 bad clients. That can certainly push you out of the business. So
Yeah.
it's amazing, man. Well, I'm going to kind of wrap us up because I know it's about that time. We've talked for a while. Again, we can talk forever about this topic. I really appreciate you jumping on. I appreciate you going so deep into a lot of detail. I truly believe this is going to be a high value conversation podcast episode. So I really appreciate you, man. anything that you want to say before you go? Any last minute tips for people who want to get into entrepreneurship, or maybe people who are struggling with entrepreneurship at the moment?
Yeah, I would say probably the best thing to do, anyone who's getting into it, talk to other entrepreneurs first and talk to many of them, because you're gonna hear some things that are people's personal experiences, and they're all
Yep.
gonna vary. And so one
Anecdotal.
experience may not align with your goals, and another experience may not, and another experience might. And so you just need to find the people that are kind of doing what you want to do, talk to them, see how they did it, but definitely use a network to see what you're getting into, because you might get some really good advice and some really eye-opening advice before you take that plunge, that helps you take that plunge more successfully. You might find partners, some money, some other stuff that you need. If you are a current entrepreneur and you're struggling, and you're like, man, I'm not sure what I got into, I'm not sure, a bit of the same advice. Go
Yeah.
talk to other entrepreneurs that have been there, that have done it. And the thing is like, yes, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts like this one, you can do a bunch of different stuff to help yourself. But I think there's almost like that meeting, being able to openly ask questions and interact one-on-one with other entrepreneurs that may have been there in a similar scenario, may have similar mindsets or similar struggles, is going to be invaluable. So surround yourself with a network that can give you this advice. So if you're struggling or want to get into it, use your network, talk about it, be humble, realize that everyone probably struggles and suffers from different things that people don't always talk about. So just open up, talk to people, and see if you can make it through. Great. If you back out, don't be ashamed of it. Do what you have to do, and then maybe you can try again later, but take care of yourself. But I think regardless, in the end, once you have it figured out, look to help the next person, look to pass it down to the next person who wants to be an entrepreneur, and see how you can make an impact. And to anyone who may be listening that's helped me or supported me over the past 5 to 10 to 15 years through the grind and hustle in various industries, thank you. No one had to do that. And I'm so fortunate for the people that did take me under the wing and teach me all these lessons and show me all this stuff that formed me into who I am today. And my wife's support, and other family member support, and like, thank you. We need more people like that doing that for entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs also needs to build a network around them to have that kind of support to be able to see the success they want. So I guess that's what I would say, is build your network, lean on them. Don't be too ashamed or too proud to ask for help. And then I really don't see why people can't, with that kind of support, make decisions and move forward towards their goals that they want. I really don't see there's a whole lot of barriers in place once you have that set up.
I agree. I agree with that. And by the way, such a fantastic ending statement that I think I can't do anything on top of that, and we'll end it right there. So good, man. And you saying thank you to everybody. Fantastic. I love that. Steven, I appreciate you, man. Let's go get coffee again soon. And enjoy. Christmas is coming up. I hope you and the family have a great Christmas too.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on, and happy holidays, my friend.
All right, man. Take care.